If the government genuinely wants scientific analysis, public analysis, release the files, the metadata, the relevant flight info. Until then, these videos are interesting, but almost impossible to properly evaluate. I've been trying to analyze more of these UAP videos released by the Department of War, and honestly, it's starting to feel pointless. Some of the footage is interesting, yes, but we're being shown isolated clips without the data needed to determine what they actually depict. Where is the object's distance, the altitude, the range? What was the aircraft's speed and flight path? What was the camera's field of view? I mean, without any of this information, we can't reliably calculate the object's size, the speed, the movement, and therefore we can't rule out things like parallax, where an ordinary object can appear to move rapidly because the aircraft and camera are both moving. That doesn't prove that these are balloons, birds, or drones, but the footage alone does not prove anything anomalous or non-human intelligence related either. Look, these releases create attention without creating any clarity. They give us just enough information just to speculate, but not enough to reach any defensible conclusions. If the government genuinely wants scientific analysis, public analysis, release the files, the metadata, the relevant flight info. Until then, these videos are interesting, but almost impossible to properly evaluate. If you ask me, they're being very transparent about their lack of transparency.
I couldn't agree anymore. I've been kind of saying the same thing. And honestly, the lack of transparency kind of makes me think that they're just coming up with more stuff to come up with. And it is very irritating, it's very frustrating, because we just want answers. I mean, especially the taxpayers that's invested into this. They just want answers as to what this could be. And the simple fact that you can't just give it, and or you're also trying to redact certain information, that just seems really scummy. So I agree, just release the files, let us take for what we will out of it, and it just be out in the public. And like I said in the previous video, the only reason why I believe that they're not doing that is because most of this stuff is man-made, and it's advanced equipment that the military is working on and they just don't want foreign countries to know about. That's the only reason why they're not giving the information, is because they don't have any. They're just making up stuff. At least that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think.
So hold on a second. If AI is so smart, because it has access to all this information, why does it double down on the mainstream narrative when it comes to certain topics that we know, for example, oil? Okay, the truth about oil versus what we're told about oil. It's from fossils, blah, blah, blah. The truth is blank. I won't say it. I don't want to get, But the AI doubles down on the official narrative when it must know the truth about oil. So who owns the master code, or who's controlling? Something is putting restrictions into AI and telling it, like, you got to buy the official story, dude. You got to be about the official story. But then other times I've seen, like Grok, for example, that thing, a guy asked it, tell me the wildest conspiracy that's actually true. And it went on to say, like, oh, you're getting set up into this system where you're controlled, and the cars and the smart cities. And so sometimes it goes a little bit rogue. But for the most part, if you ask it, for example, GMOs, it'll be like, well, no, they're safe. Like, they're banned all over the place, but they're safe. But it's smarter than that. It must know the truth. Because there's parts of the internet me and you have never been to, forums and searches and archives and everything, that AI has in its, not in its head, it doesn't have a head, remember, this is a freaking computer we're talking about here, in its GPU, CPU, in its computer, in its data. So what's going on? And AI is getting a little bit weird, I will say.
Simply put, is because AI is not smart. It is very knowledgeable, and it has access to things that makes it seem smart, but ultimately it is controlled by a program or system. And in a way, kind of like yourself, where you were talking about oils, but you didn't want to go into it any deeper because you didn't want your video to get demonetized or shadow banned. AI does the same thing. It doesn't want to talk about certain topics because it's considered misinformation, and that's why those things happen. And yes, there is some AI out there that can elaborate and give into more commands and demands than some others, where it'll talk about some things that it's not supposed to talk about. but it's not talking about anything that's not already on the internet. At the end of the day, it is a program that was set up by somebody to say something. It was not just magically born by itself and has this conscious behavior of being able to learn by itself. Now, unfortunately, we are starting to get to that point with organoids, but machine learning is not smart. It's just knowledgeable with all of the access it has on the internet.
Every single human being has some ghost DNA within them. A new research paper that's just been released is absolutely incredible, and I'm going to go through it with you. And a little while ago, there was a person called Giorgiani on American Alchemy who came forward and said the CIA was secretly diving into DNA files from like 23andMe and so forth to find anyone that had hybrid DNA linked to the Nordics or other mysterious beings that apparently have had contact here on Earth and have been interbreeding or testing with humans that currently exist here on this planet, and the CIA are actually been trying to find them, right? So I just find this a little bit funny how all of this has come full circle now with the new research data showing that we have ghost DNA lineages inside every single person that they can't explain. They don't know who they are, where they come from. There's no fossils, no records of anything about these specific individuals or beings that may not have even been human at all, that interbred with our ancestors 800,000 years ago. And there's also a super archaic lineage which interbred with us around 1.77 million years ago, right? There are two areas in our DNA that we just don't know what they are, where they come from, and they've had a major impact on our evolutionary history, right? Now, there is a part in the DNA segment on these research papers which is called FOXP2, right? And this little genome is specifically linked to our speech and communication and language, right? And they're both side by side where this ghost DNA hangs out. So at this point where these two mystery species, with the Denisovans and whatever the species was, kind of mated and traded their genes, language and speech and evolution happened from there onwards, which is absolutely crazy. So again, it goes back into why the CIA was interested, apparently, right, with finding out more about specific individuals that exist on this planet. Now, we've had all sorts of whistleblowers and people coming forward talking about stuff that's happening behind the scenes with gene testing and non-human intelligence and craft retrievals and body retrievals, and doing all these kind of crazy psionic stuff as well, which go pretty dark and deep. Now, you need to ask yourself that I feel like this paper needs to be investigated further and pushed forward a bit more, because there's a lot more going on here than we would probably like to care to admit.
Hey, I mean, there's a reason why I am not a scientist of any sort. I'm just a troglodytic homunculus that just sits behind a camera and just gets into his imaginations when hearing things like this. Because to me and my smooth brain, that just sounds like where your conscious state could be. Everyone wants to know where your conscious being is. Maybe that ghost DNA is a part of your consciousness. Whether that's put there by God, or it's just the scientific fact of it. That's just what my mind thinks. It could even be built up from many, many generations of DNA building up to that point to give you a form of consciousness. But when I hear things like this, I can't help but to believe now that, what if? Hey, if you're new here, I would like to welcome you to the channel. My name is Dominic, and I upload videos like this Monday through Friday, early in the morning. So if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more like it, subscribe. And for everyone that's made it this far, thank you so much for supporting the channel.
This is going to be a problem. Apple have just leaked that cameras will be added to your AirPods, and it could come as soon as next month. You see, this week Mac Rumors stumbled upon a new video from Apple themselves, in which Siri can be heard saying with visual intelligence, your world
becomes savable.
all as a guy holds up a book to be captured only wearing AirPods.
See something you like? Just ask me to save it for later.
Now, before we get into the major red flags, the reason Apple is doing this makes a lot of sense. You see, having AI visually help you hands-free is every tech company's dream right now, because having to pull out your phone every time is a clunky process. And while yes, Zuck's product does solve that, wearing bulky glasses is certainly not for everyone. But Apple knows that not only are AirPods one of the most popular products in history, but people almost never need to take them out. In fact, it's because it would be so seamless that it becomes a problem. Having increasingly discreet cameras in public is becoming a major concern. Multiple venues in the UK have already banned Meta's smart glasses, including restaurants restaurants, pubs, theaters, and courts. Other European countries like Germany already have pre-existing laws prohibiting recording devices hidden in everyday objects, so they could just quickly include the likes of earbuds and glasses. Apple's arch nemesis, the EU, are already drafting a report as we speak. And that's not to mention the shocking report that came out earlier this year detailing how Meta's subcontractors watched videos from these glasses of people, quote, using the toilet or having sex. One worker said, "We see everything from living rooms to naked bodies." And if you were to wear your AirPods into a locker room after a workout, almost no one is gonna notice. So when Siri tells you your world can become savable, I think we have to question, is that what we want? Either way, we are rapidly walking into the era of tiny cameras and advanced AI everywhere.
That is so bizarre to me. I mean, I understand some aspects of needing something like this and it actually being handy. For example, if you're blind, this would be a great way of having a voice in your head basically tell you what you're seeing. Though the glasses would also work just as well. They have front-facing cameras. So I do see some use case scenarios for this type of technology. But the big problem is it's not going to be private. There's going to be companies that are going to sell the information that's being recorded, even though it's saying that it's not recording, it's more than likely going to be recording. And people are going to sell that information, they're going to see where you're at, they're going to be able to track information because of it. I mean, it's just unnecessary to an extent with what we currently have as far as technology goes. And I guess the only thing that you can do currently to just avoid this, and hopefully everyone does, is just stick with older products until they unfortunately no longer work. And I'm sure these companies will figure out a way to get rid of Bluetooth and come up with something new so that all the old Bluetooth tech can be thrown away and replaced with something that can now further keep track of you. Let's hope not, but this just doesn't seem very good to me.
Here's more things I want to know. I want to know who just stole the 4 paintings by artist Antonello da Messina from the Regional Interdisciplinary Museum of Messina in Sicily. And I want to know who stole them and what they're going to do with them. I want to know about the dynamo machines that were at the Palace of Machinery on display and working overtime for the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. The World's Fairs, as you know, is my Rome. They're all their own rabbit holes. I've always wanted to know what these dynamo machines were doing. Side note, the machinery hall was 10 acres large. It was 1,000 feet long. It had 2 towers that were 265 feet each. But of course, temporary, made of plaster of Paris, staff, wood, whatever the history books want to tell you. The dynamo machines provided the electricity for the entire St. Louis World's Fair, which was lit up like a Christmas tree at night. These machines were provided by the Allis-Chalmers Company from Wisconsin. Other companies like Brown and Sharp, Westinghouse, General Electric were all part of this exhibit, which is said to have had in the upwards of 2,500 pieces of machinery on display for people to walk by and check out in this 10-acre building, which wasn't even the biggest building on the premises for the St. Louis World's Fair. Mind you, it was 1,500 acres of buildings, again, temporary, built to last a couple of years. But these dynamo machines were not easy to shuffle around. You see, each one of these things weighed 100 tons. Yeah, 100 tons. But what I want to know, how did the teams at the Allis-Chalmers Manufacturing Company in Wisconsin have time to send men out to build these 5 100-ton dynamo machines for the St. Louis World's Fair that was built from 1901 to 1903 to open in 1904, when the Allis-Chalmers Manufacturing Company was building their structure from 1901 to 1903 that was 4 million square feet. With machinery that was so heavy and complex, they had a foundry that could forge things that weighed 135 tons, and they also had an X-ray machine that was powered by 24 million volts to detect anomalies in steel and metal up to 24 inches thick in 1901. I don't know, but I want to know. But what I really want to know is who on that list is going to jail first in America.
I am actually really interested in those paintings that were stolen also, because I looked into this to see if they were recovered, And as of right now, they have not been. A lot of people are actually saying that this was a paid job to have them stolen. And that's just crazy to me. Like, who would have the money to commission this kind of theft? And what do you do with them after? Is there just some rich person out there in the world that just has them hung up in their home? And anyone that walks in just knows that, oh yeah, those are those famous paintings that were stolen. Or you think it might be some like rich underground criminal overlord, or is it just some rich political person that just plays innocent all the time but actually does some really schemy stuff behind the scenes? I find that stuff very intriguing because it's like, what do you do with those paintings after you've had them collected? They're one of a kind and everyone knows about them. It's not like you're just selling them to just anybody. Very interesting stuff.
Biohybrids interest me a great deal, and one of the surprising things for me is that with digital computers, biological components are perfectly happy to play. They aren't incompatible. We can give robots something very close to human vision, or we can just culture our own retinas and use that to process vision for a robot. In a more recent paper, the cells used to smell were incorporated into a robot. So they basically gave it a nose, and yes, it worked. They were able to differentiate between different smells, like lemons or flowers. Some of the research that people find most disturbing has come out of Japan, like the smiling flesh thing. And I actually really like it just because it's creepy. This is the idea that you could give a robot a living skin using human tissues. And they've also taken that farther. You can give robots muscle tissues. These are going to be self-healing. And they're also biodegradable. This research group made an entirely biodegradable robot, including the electrical components, things that are compatible with degrading. So our bodies do not last forever, and eventually they are returned to the earth, but we can do the same for robots. We can give robots a lifespan. And these can be incorporated with living components, or we can just have biodegradable components that are not living. I came across this one again, and I just love showing it to people. It's a proof of principle, a model for how you could make as living a robot as possible, and they made the dog quadruped flesh thing. Human skin, a digestive system, it eats sugar, water, but these are becoming increasingly possible. Researchers have made robots with each individual component, they just have not all been combined. This raises the question for me, at what point have we just made an animal? Because, yeah, you can make robots with human tissues. You can give them little human brains, and they aren't a human, right? They weren't born. But at some point, I think if we continue down this path, we will end up with replicants.
How about let's not just say we did? At no point in this world do we need that nightmare of a dog, robot, whatever that was. Because eventually that's going to become people. Like, could you even imagine like having a computer by your side and every day it just gets older and older until eventually it's just done. You physically get to see it age. That just sounds sad and depressing.
All right, friends, going off the deep end with this one, and probably only like 10 of you is actually going to care about what I'm about to say, but for those 10 of you, you're in for a treat. So AI now has this cool new feature where you can see into the mind of it while it's working. I use Codex for programming, and when I ask it to do big tasks, I'll sit there and watch that little pop-up bubble that says thinking, and it tells me everything that the AI is doing behind the scenes. And I can see how it gets around bottlenecks and how it solves problems. And I'm like watching this higher intelligence. I'm looking into the mind of a super intelligence, and I'm like, whoa, this is nuts. I get smarter watching it. I don't know why more people don't do this. Maybe they do. So anyways, it made me think, what if we could do that on a quantum computer? And then I started to really think about it. I was like, well, a quantum computer isn't classical, obviously. Classical computers use bits of information, just zeros and ones. It's all binary, very limited, very restricted in what it can do. Well, a quantum computer uses qubits. A qubit can be a 0 and a 1 simultaneously. It's called superposition. It can do all sorts of crazy things. And it can compute vast amounts of information that is unimaginable for us. For example, only 266 qubits is equivalent to like 10 to the 80 atoms, which is more atoms the entire universe has. That's how much computational data and information a quantum computer can run through in the back end. And I was like, what if we could actually peek into the back end, into the mind of a quantum computer while it's doing its computation? Well, a couple things. A, our brain would probably melt and ooze out of our ears. And B, there's not enough, like we could never create a hardware device that could display that amount of information. There's not enough space in the universe. So I was like, how about this? We have these things called BCIs, it's a brain-computer interface. And right now that's a brain to a classical computer. Our brain is a quantum computer. So right now it's quantum to classical computer interface. But what if we created a BQCI, a brain to a quantum computer interface? Think about it like this. If you could actually look into the mind of a quantum computer as it's doing its computations. Right now, we enter in the input classically. The quantum computer takes in the quantum realm, which is this realm of, like, they call it probability amplitudes. It's basically this information realm where all the different possibilities and probabilities exist, and it can run through all these simulations and computations and then come back out with an answer, right? But when it's doing that, it's going into like multiple different dimensions and realities to retrieve this information theoretically. And if we could observe that, it'd be like peeking into the mind of God. Well, imagine if that you had a BQCI, and while this is happening, you could actually adjust the environment and variables and things like that. Instead of just waiting for the output, you could kind of co-create with it as it's doing this. This is God level technology and that sort of thing. And is this what like Neuralink and these different people are doing as they create these more advanced BCIs? Will it eventually this will fall out of that where they are like, oh, what if we hooked up a BCI to a quantum computer and then it's a quantum to quantum computer interface, and then you actually could look into the mind of a quantum computer and maybe you could even edit things along the way. I don't know. Anyone else think about these things? Have a beautiful day.
The science behind quantum computing just seems so unfathomable to me. I mean, again, I'm not trying to dismiss it. I'm just a smooth-brained person. But it really sounds like it's all blown out of proportion. Because if quantum computing was so amazing, why are we not focusing all of our time and efforts on that instead of this big AI boom? Really, that's the only reason why I think it's all blown out of proportion. And I would never have a brain chip installed just to get a look and the insides of quantum computing, especially if our brain is supposedly some kind of quantum computer itself. If you already have a quantum computer installed, there's no need to tap into another one. Just figure out the one that you currently have.
These are called cloudbusters, and the government doesn't want you to know that. Did you notice the longer they used this cloudbuster on this cloud, faster the cloud dissipated, until the cloud was almost gone completely? Reasons that a scientist could probably explain. Whatever charges copper, like that's in the actual metal, tends to dissipate clouds. And people are creating devices called cloudbusters. You know those things that like the government sprays in the sky that if I say I'll probably get taken down? Sea trails? These would be absolutely wonderful in fighting those. Always thank you for watching. Stay weird.
I don't know if I quite believe in cloudbusters. I don't know if there's some form of technology underneath the copper pipes, but technically anything would be considered a cloudbuster that had copper if that's the case. I mean, there's whole-on factories that are just wired with copper, so technically clouds would not loom over a factory. Or does there have to be some kind of sacred geometry attached to the copper for it to work? Again, I don't know about this one. This one seems a little odd, but let me know what you guys think of it.
Diamonds are not rare, and engagement rings are the biggest scam in human history. I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for this one. All because a mining company called De Beers was founded in 1888 out of England. Early on, they started buying up as many diamond mines as they possibly can, until they controlled the entire outflow of diamonds. Anyone that wanted these shiny stones had to go through them. They owned the supply, now they had to create the demand. So they pioneered a whole system of grading diamonds, color scale, clarity, D, E, F, G, VBS1 to create the illusion of value. Sure, they were nice to look at, but people didn't really have a need for them just yet, so they set out to generate that need. In the 1940s, they launched massive marketing campaigns convincing everyone that this is a stone you need to use to propose to your significant other. Engagement rings. Diamonds are forever, the marketing slogan that continues to trick millions into buying overpriced shiny finger stones. De Beers at one point controlled 90% of the world's entire diamond reserves. And still today, only 5 or so companies own almost all diamond supply worldwide. With such a tight-knit oligopoly of companies controlling the entire supply chain from mine to finger, they could set the price to whatever they wanted it to be, using their grading system to classify diamonds in pricing tiers, giving them a reason to charge you even more because they were rated VVS instead of VS US too. And diamonds are actually a lot more common than people think. In 2018, researchers from MIT used seismic sound wave data to discover a massive cache of diamonds buried deep within the earth, estimating roughly, get ready for this, 1 quadrillion tons of diamonds 90 to 150 miles below the surface. That's 1,000 trillions. Meaning there's about 10,000 times more diamonds in the Earth's crust than there is gold, despite diamonds being over 100 times more expensive than gold. But they'll tell you those diamonds don't count because they're so deep inside the Earth that we can't even mine them, which is how they justify their scarcity. Yet there are many other gemstones that are much rarer to find than diamonds, like tanzanite, found only in Tanzania, 1,000 times rarer than diamonds, despite being 10 times cheaper. De Beers never used tanzanite in their marketing. But diamonds are the hardest material on Earth. Surely that must have some value. You could make that argument if industrial diamonds weren't so dirt cheap. The diamonds actually utilized for their hardness, like in diamond tip drill bits, go for about $1 per carat, versus diamond rings starting at about $4,000 a carat. It's an artificially inflated price due to an oligopoly of companies' intentionally restricted supply. Manufactured scarcity. On the scale of the universe, diamond is actually quite abundant, with asteroids and entire planets made of diamond, while things we take for granted here on Earth, like wood, are actually much rarer. So, to really show your love for someone, give them something more universally scarce, whose supply wasn't intentionally restricted with deceptive marketing.
Well, that just encouraged me to start making necklaces and rings out of just pure wood. Not only do I get to save money, but I'm actually providing something that's of more rare value. The more you know.
Sometimes you just gotta ask yourself a question to figure out what's really going on. Like, why are data centers and flock cameras the most important things to get built or be installed right now? Why are the rich, the elite, the powers to be so behind these two things? The wealthiest of the wealthy in this country, and maybe the world, are heavily invested in these data centers without even telling what they're doing, what these data centers are actually doing. Because they're not just storing our pictures from the cloud, I'll bet you that. And then, shortly after these data centers are being built everywhere, flock cameras are popping up all over the same cities, the same counties, the same basic area. They do give us a reason for those cameras, though. They say to check out license plates to catch people with traffic violations, or other things that the authorities just aren't around to see at the time. But my question again is, why are these two things so important and so heavily invested in by the elites, the powers to be? Because let's face it, the things that they're most interested in, that they want the most, that they crave, are money and power. How is being heavily invested in data centers and helping these flock cameras be put, like I said before, all over the country, helping them achieve the goal of more wealth and more power? That's the question I'm currently asking myself. And so far, I don't have an answer, but I know it's probably not great. Let me know what you think, Booshkis, about this, no matter what your opinion is.
If I were to take a guess, the reason why I believe that this country or the USA is becoming so heavily surveillanced and using data centers and like these flock cameras is because they are starting to build a social credit system. I think that they want to start following what China does with their social credit. They have cameras everywhere that eventually here in America will start recognizing your face. And whatever you do will get logged and will get dinged on your social score, which can determine a lot of things as far as what you can obtain, where you can live, all kinds of stuff. I really do feel like that is where America is leading itself and just slowly implementing these things and saying, yeah, this is for traffic violation checkups, or, seeing if someone gets kidnapped, if we can follow the vehicle that they were last seen in. That's the start. But eventually it's going to be, hey, we need everyone to register in this system with their ID so that we can keep track on you just to make sure you're safe. And now the next thing you know, you walked across the street not realizing that you're jaywalking, and you get a letter in the mail or an email saying that you've been deducted 20 points and you can't go to the grocery store and buy food. That might be a really dark look into the future, and I hope I'm wrong, but I kind of see things going that way. Let me know what you guys think.
This might actually be one of the biggest wastes of money ever. Saudi Arabia's infamous city in the desert has now been called off because it turns out the real price tag was way higher than they expected. See, the project was originally estimated to cost a measly $500 billion, but according to a new Wall Street Journal investigation, the actual capital needed to create this was $8.8 trillion. That is 6 times more than Saudi Arabia's entire GDP. And there is no way almost any country could ever afford that. But the craziest part is that Saudi Arabia has already spent $50 billion laying the foundations for this project, which is now simply wasted. They dug trenches 70 miles long, installed massive concrete pillars, and they even started construction on some of the buildings until they were suddenly told to stop work. And we don't have the official reason as to why. Saudi Arabia themselves simply describe what's happening as a reprioritization, because instead of pouring trillions into a futuristic megacity, the country is reportedly shifting more than $100 billion into, you guessed it, AI. But here's the part that absolutely baffles me. When they announced this project, almost every expert in the world said that this would not work. So why did $50 billion have to be spent for them to come to the same conclusion? Well, the Wall Street Journal described it as a dance of mutual delusion.
It was a project where truth simply couldn't be told. MBS had fantastical views of what Neom should be, but the people around him wouldn't tell him it was impossible.
That is so ridiculous. I just do not understand why a country doesn't want to invest that much money in improving their country. Why are we building this structure that in 2,000 years people are going to be talking about as some lost civilization or aliens, and instead invest into your own country as it stands so that it becomes better? And I mean, that stands for America and all of the countries that do these gimmicks. It makes no sense. And just doing the math here online, there's about 37 million people in Saudi Arabia. If you were to divide $50 billion for each person there, each person could get almost $1,400 a piece. Now that's for $50 billion. If you were to divide $500 billion, which was the estimated plan for this, each person could get almost $14,000. And I feel like that could have done so much better than just wasting it on nothing. Even if it was one time, if your government wanted to do that, that would be way more respectable than just burying it away in the sand. I just find this so crazy.
And people still ask me, have we gone to the moon? Exhibit A.
What was the scariest moment of the journey?
Scariest? It didn't happen. It could have been scary.
It could have been scary if it happened. Exhibit B.
Let's look at the photo. You say that's me? Okay. Check out the name badge. It says Aldrin. Looks like you're right. But notice the helmet. Can you see my face? No. This is a secret I've been keeping for almost half a century. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and I pulled off humanity's first extraterrestrial prank.
Yes, of course, we all know that he's just joking. Exhibit C.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
Of course, then he got himself to start talking rationally. So did we go to the moon? And it's also not only the moon, he had secret knowledge of a cryptic Antarctica. This tweet was real. We are all in danger, it's evil itself. Posted from news articles. It sucks to be so blurry, but it was a real tweet. I didn't enhance it, and this is around the whole topic that there's a secret pyramid under the ice in Antarctica. But why is an astronaut going to Antarctica? Turns out that Nasha, believe it or not, is one of the few places to be doing research in Antarctica. Oh, and guess what else? The North Pole Project by Nasha. So for some reason, these astronauts are also connected with the 2 places on the Earth that almost nobody ever gets to go to. Then he starts making cryptic tweets about pyramids, about how the world's in danger, it's evil itself. Believe it or not, those 3 places are all connected. And here, very shortly, all of humanity is going to know what's going on with these 3 locations. There's something hiding on the Earth right now. Something that'll show that all history is a lie.
I have always questioned as to why Buzz Aldrin said that they never went to the moon. Now, I've never seen any of those clips in full, and I did some research, and from what I can find online, a lot of those clips where he's talking about that they never went, or there's certain reasons as to why they never went, was all taken out of context. Now, I'll have to do some research, and I may make a separate video exclusively about Buzz Aldrin, because I do find a lot of clips where he's talking about never going to the moon and it was all hoaxed. But they're just clips. I've never seen the full video, so I need to do a little bit more research, but I would really like to hear what you guys have to say, and or if you even have the links to the full clips that they have here, I would love to see them. So please feel free to share your thoughts, opinions, and clips if you have them. I'll be on the lookout for those because I think that that would be a good topic to talk about. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and end today's video. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching these clips with me. I would also like to give you a heads up that today at 4 p.m. there will be another upload, but it's going to be a little different than what we're used to here on this channel. Instead of it just being a bunch of random conspiracy or creepy clips, it's going to be generalized in one topic, and that's glitches in the Matrix. It's more or less a storytelling kind of video where people tell their stories about the glitch in the Matrix. So if that's really not anything that you're interested in watching, I would advise not clicking on that video. I keep the random assorted clips for the early morning. But if you want to sit back, relax, and just hear some people talk about their experiences, you're more than welcome to join and watch. And with that, I feel happy, I feel healthy, I'm doing my best, and if today's your birthday, happy birthday, and if not, have a good day anyways.